Welcome to Titusville, Pennsylvania. Located in the southeast corner of Crawford County, along the historic banks of Oil Creek, this town is filled with rich history and local pride. Join us as residents show and tell everything that makes their community a great hometown.
My name is Margaret Feely, and I'm doing a story on Titusville Illustrated History written by Mabel K. Clark, who was from Titusville, went to Edinburgh Normal, came back to Titusville as a teacher in social studies forever. This was the only school she taught in. And for the centennial, she decided that we need to have a history book. So she collaborated with our superintendent, Howard Newsom, at the time, and the board approved that we would do a history book. Took many people to do it, but it's totally on Titusville itself and the area. She was very proud of the book, and it is used in the 4th grade at Titusville Area School District in the elementary. I would like to read a short passage from Mabel's book. Can you visualize a valley with tree-covered hillsides? A creek flows through this valley. There are no houses, no people. There are only the wild animals protected by the dense forest. In this valley came 2 men, Jonathan Titus and Samuel Kerr. The year is 1796. What was the United States like in that year? George Washington, our first president, was beginning the last year of his 2nd term. Our country was small in size. It extended from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River and from the Great Lakes to Florida. Florida was owned by Spain. Although Pennsylvania had been established as a colony over 100 years ago, there were no settlements in this valley. Jonathan Titus and his uncle Samuel Kerr were surveyors, and they came to Titusville and formed the Holland Lumber Company. And the lumber business escalated with them coming to our valley, taking the timber out so that they could start building log cabins from the timber. And that's how our valley got started. The lumber industry, of course, back in those days, the men worked very hard at taking the timber out of the woods, and they made sure every particle was used in some manner. And they had nothing to work with, no power tools, everything was done by hand. And in later years then, in 1859, August 27th, Colonel Edwin L. Drake drilled the first successful oil well, which is in the southern east part of Titusville, Venango County. And that is Drake Well Park, known today, and has a beautiful museum with all the artifacts from that period of time. The book has many interesting aspects contained in it. For one thing that we are very, very proud of is John Heisman. He played football at Carter Field, which our team still uses today. Also, we have a beautiful trust company bank known as Farmers Bank at this time, and it has a mural ceiling, and it depicts the oil and the train and the lumber industries. And the train, it was used, of course, in the earlier years, the only mode of transportation to get people to and from their work and to and from the city if they were touring or coming this way. I would also like to comment that in the book Titusville and Illustrated History, it shows all of the architecture of different houses, especially on Main Street. A lot of them were built in 1800s, and again, there was no power tools. Everything was done by hand. Most of them are 3 floors, and most of them have insides are depicted of the yesteryear that they were built for. And we're just very proud of all that history we have in our town.
Hi, I'm Melissa Mann. I'm the site administrator at Drake Well Museum and Park. Well, Drake discovered oil along the banks of Oil Creek just outside of Titusville in 1859. By the turn of the 20th century, during that period between 1859 and the turn of the 20th century, the oil industry was really headquartered in Pennsylvania. But after 1901 in Spindletop in Texas, that's when the industry kind of moves out of Texas, and Pennsylvania really isn't in the spotlight anymore. But at that time, folks are, here in Titusville and in the surrounding area, are looking at the property where Drake Well originally was, and seeing that it's gone back to nature. Nobody's really paying attention to it anymore. But that they think that it's an important site. And there were a few folks who were working on preserving that site. One of them was Edwin Bell, who opened a museum in 1913, the original Drake Well Museum. It wasn't on the site of the Drake Well. It was actually on a brick building on West 27, on the way out of Titusville towards Meadville. That building still stands. And then there was the Daughters of the American Revolution, who were also working on preserving the actual site of the Drake Well. Really all that was there and remaining was a drive pipe sticking up out of the ground. But they thought that this was the birthplace of an industry that had grown into something that folks in the 19th century didn't realize how big it would become. And that they wanted to say, Titusville, this along Oil Creek was the place where this started. So the Daughters of the American Revolution were gifted 1 acre of land that included the original well, and they put a sandstone monument there, and that was the first act of historic preservation of that site. In the early 1930s, right before the 75th anniversary of the Drake Well, the American Petroleum Institute gets on board and really wants to preserve this site as a memorial to the birthplace of the industry. And they start talking to folks in the Titusville area who own property surrounding that 1 acre and the original well site, and they start asking them to donate property, and they get to about 200 acres, and they also build the first museum on the site and a caretaker's house. And those opened in the 1930s. But the agreement was that the American Petroleum Institute would put this land together, put this property together, and then the state of Pennsylvania would take over the property. And that's what happens in the mid-1930s. And in 1935, the well itself is named a National Historic Landmark. The next kind of jump in time then happens in the 1960s. In 1959, you have the 100th anniversary, and after building on the excitement of that anniversary, the state decides to build a larger museum. So they replace that original brick museum with a Pennsylvania limestone building, which still stands today as our visitor center. So in the mid-1960s, that building opens. Well, we're very excited because in 2012, we just reopened our 10,000 square foot exhibit space, which had been under construction for the first time since the 1960s. That building was completely gutted and refurbished. And it has a completely new exhibit. And what's exciting about the new exhibit is that that 1960 exhibit really told the story of the 19th century, but we're very lucky in that we interpret an industry that keeps creating history. And so because our space doesn't, the size of our space doesn't change, we need to kind of reconfigure how we tell that story. The exhibit now is thematic instead of chronological, and by doing it thematically, we're able to cover more than 150 years of history within that theme, which we weren't able to do before. The exhibit displays so many more artifacts than we were ever able to display in the earlier exhibits. And so people are able to have access to our historical collections in ways that they didn't before, which is very exciting. Historic sites are where communities take their identity. And the Drakewell site is one of those places where we're telling a history. While it's a complex story, there's good things about the history and there's bad things, just as in any other topic. And but it's the place where people in Titusville can look to and say, with pride, and say, look at what was accomplished here and what grew from something that was done here, out of innovativeness and ingenuity and hard work. And so I think that those are things that folks who live or were born in Titusville and even have left, take with them and say, this is what it means to be from Titusville. I also think that the museum remains important to a broader community because history is significant. Because of the way that it connects to things that are happening in our everyday lives. And energy continues to be a complex issue that we continue to have to deal with every day. It's something that affects every one of us. And we're able to help provide folks with tools to enter that conversation by connecting them to history.
Hello, I'm Barry Cressman, and today I'd like to share with you what I know about the Shidi family. The Shidi family has had a major influence upon Titusville over more than 110 years. So, a fascinating family with a fascinating story. The first generation of the Shidi families actually came to Titusville soon after oil was first drilled, and that would have been William T. Shidi. And William T. Shidi came to Ute. He came as a simple operator of telegraphy, but soon branched out into the oil business, made a small fortune at age 42, retired, moved to Titusville in about 1880, built a lovely house, and began the collection of very rare books, which was then continued on by later generations. But then when he passed away in 1907, his son John Shidi continued the collection. And it was during the Great Depression that he collected some of his most valuable works, including the acquisition of an exceedingly valuable copy of the Gutenberg Bible. Some of your listeners might not know that there are only today roughly 40 existent copies of the Gutenberg. Originally, we guess maybe 180 of them were produced. And John Shidi's, which he purchased for, at that time, the enormous sum of $45,000. The most recent, by the way, to be traded was at $2.8 million at Sotheby's back in 1978. But back in the 20s, $45,000 would get you a Gutenberg Bible. That was really just the beginning of the collection of the very rare books. He continued to add things such as one of the first printings of the Declaration of Independence. One of the first printings actually was a written copy, one of the first written copies of the Magna Carta. One of Lincoln's speeches given when he was back in 1856 it would have been, campaigning for the then Republican nominee for the presidency, a speech on slavery. And over the course of the decades, numerous other volumes, Americana, focused probably more than anything else on Bibles and biblical material. The collection continued on in Titusville and was enhanced after the first William Shidi died, enhanced by his son John, as I noted, and then greatly enhanced by William H. Shidi, the grandson of the original William Shidi. In 1959, Bill Shidi's mom passed away. Her name was Harriet. And at that point, Bill, who had gone to college and graduated from Princeton University in 1936, and Bill, realizing that Princeton was the center of education, a center for culture, a center for music, he also had a great interest in Bach and Bach's music. had acquired quite a number of original Bach scores, decided that he would relocate to Princeton, and along with him he relocated the library, which through a special arrangement with Princeton University was reduplicated in exactly the way it exists in Titusville as an addition to the major Firestone Library at Princeton University, where it still exists today. I might add that when Bill died, that's now the third generation Bill of whom I speak, as I grant you a little confusing. When the current Bill died, and that would have been almost exactly 2 years ago, I believe it was November the 10th, 2014, the entire collection, which had remained in Bill's hands, though it was actually housed at the university, was turned over to Princeton and was appraised by Princeton University at that time as $300 million. The most valuable gift, the largest gift ever given in the whole history of the university. So quite an amazing collection of rare books.
My name is Justin Henke, and I am the Executive Director at the Benson Memorial Library here in Titusville, PA. The history behind the Benson Memorial Library, they started building it in 1902 on what was, I believe, a former skating rink in the middle of town. I hear that there was quite a few skating rinks in town, and this one could go so they could build a library. They completed building it in 1903, so I think we're on 113 or 114 years in the same building. And so through the years, we started off as like kind of a standard Carnegie-sized library, where kind of everything's in one room and there's a few rooms on the sides, and we've expanded throughout the years. We have a wonderful basement, which is home to our storytime room, community room, our board room. And we've added on to the back to give ourselves a kids section. I think that came in the 70s or the 80s. So we've just been growing as the need for the library has grown in the community, keeping up with them, keeping up with our building. A lot of times now you can just jump to your phone and get all the information you want. So a lot of people think that libraries don't really have much of a place in the community anymore, but I'd argue differently. We're a place where people can come and connect with each other, connect with technology, connect with literature. The important thing is that we're a community center, and when you bring people together, something special happens. It's great to look something up on your phone just like that, but it's something else to interact with another human being. And while that may seem very simple, I think that's a very important part of our job these days, is keeping in touch with each other, and the library is a great place to do that. So a lot of our programming focuses on kids these days, and introducing them to the joy of reading, introducing them to other people in their community. Story times, baby and me times, where we just bring kids together, sing songs, read stories, do activities. Those are our biggest things. But we're trying to branch out in a lot of different ways. We think about how to get kids better prepared for the future. One of the things we recently did was we got a 3D printer at the library to just basically introduce kids to technology and say, hey, there's this new thing out there, may or may not be something big in the future, but if you learn something about this, you'll be better prepared when you're an adult. I believe that every good library in a community is the center for lifelong learning. You go through elementary school, you go through high school, you either go off to college or you don't. It just doesn't stop there. The library is a place where that can continue to, you can continue to go down some educational path, whether it be something very niche that you like. You can go down the path of music and investigate everything through the library. You can just go worldly and learn all about the world, and that's the place that we are and we want to continue to be. So being that the Benson Memorial Library building is 113 years old, I like to call it my 9th employee and the most picky one. We're constantly having to renovate the building, make sure it's still standing. The big renovations were in the 70s or 80s. We built on a children's section in the back to expand the library. We've been keeping up with a handicap accessible ramp, a downstairs basement that's our community room, where most of our programs for all ages occur. And just this past summer, we got to work with a local architecture firm and renovate our front steps, which are beautiful original sandstone steps. And yeah, they're kind of restored back to their old glory, and they're functioning. They nod to the history, and it's all good. So since we here in Titusville, we're sort of geographically, we're landlocked, and we don't have many highways around us, so we're kind of in our own little world here. I like to think of the library as the place that will pull those things from the outside world and hopefully be the place that can introduce our residents to something new. Because you can't get everything through news, you can't get everything through the internet, so we try to be that place in town that will bring them into the 21st century.
I am Lynn Cressman. I'm going to talk today about the Tarbell House and its famous resident, Ida Tarbell. Mr. Tarbell built the house in 1870, and the house was sold in the late teens to the Green family. And the Green family transformed the house into apartments. And in some of that construction, there was a fire. And the fire destroyed one wing of the house. But nonetheless, the house did not burn down, but it did remove the cupola from the top of the roof. The fire traveled through the roof line. And so the new roof that was placed was a more pitched roof instead of the Italianate roof that had been there. And so in sometime later, the Greens sold the house to the Gibson family, who continued it as an apartment house. And then in 2007, Oil Region Alliance in Oil City, Pennsylvania bought the house as a historical property. It was the home, childhood home of Ida Tarbell, and she always considered it her home. When she said, "I'm going home," she was going home to Titusville. So the house was in dire need of repair. Roof, foundation work, heating, plumbing, it truly was it needed renovation. And so Oil Region Alliance first took the house and got the foundation in a more stable position. After that, they replaced the roof, and it was a very interesting project. Northwest Pennsylvania, we have a lot of rain, and so because it was a pitched roof, the construction company, which was Gustafson Construction of Oil City, built the new roof under the old roof. And so when the new roof was done, they peeled off the old roof, and there beneath it was a brand new Italianate roof, which was the original style that went on this house. There was then extensive renovation inside. There was new electric, some alterations to plumbing. We had new furnaces. So the house was quite a mess inside with all the work that had been done. But then the final stage was to have the walls repaired, and there are lovely rounded walls in many of the rooms there. And then painting, and as Marilyn Black, who is Vice President of Oil Region Alliance, says, when the cupola is returned to the top of the house, we'll know the renovation is complete. And in the summer of 2016, the cupola went up. Cupola was built in the front yard and then hoisted into place, and crowds gathered to watch the hoisting. It fit perfectly, and there is now an absolutely gorgeous little cupola on top of the house, which was the place Ida mentions most often when she wrote about her home, was the cupola. Now, there is an interesting little bit of history here. As we renovated the house, we were constantly looking for the access to the cupola. We didn't know how the family ever got up there, and we still do not know for sure. We have some guesses about another room where there are some marks on the wall that indicate that perhaps the stairway went up in that room and then circled over to the cupola. We don't know. But we do have access, and visitors to the house can come and travel up to the cupola and capture the view, which is glorious through the treetops of Titusville.
I'm Chris Feely, and I'm going to talk about Titusville's favorite son, John W. Heisman. John's father was a barrel cooper, and they lived over in Cleveland. And the family moved over when John was 3 years old from Cleveland to Titusville, because this is where oil was, and his father would do better in his business if he lived over in Titusville because of the oil industry. So they moved over, and John grew up here, just a boy, regular life. He learned how to play football on a barren land that we'll be showcasing, and it still exists. Nothing has ever been built on it. It's always been a grass field. It is now owned by the Titusville Area School District, and it's adjacent to the Titusville Middle School. So and they lived right across the street, basically, from that grassy area. So that was John's playground, so to speak, so growing up. So John graduated from Titusville in 1887. So that's exactly 140 years from now when we're shooting this. And he went to Brown University, which is an Ivy League school. And I think that's probably one of the most impressive things about John was not only was he smart in football, but he was smart academically also to go to an Ivy League school from little Titusville, Pennsylvania, even at 10,000 people at the most here, was quite an accomplishment for John. So when John Heisman got out of college from Brown University, he started his coaching career only in college and university levels. And he was able to implement several of his concepts like the center snap, the forward pass by quarterbacks, breaking the scoreboard, or inventing the scoreboard, and breaking the game into 4 quarters to give his teams rest between first and second, halftime, and third quarter. So he invented all of those. That's the type of guy he was. He was very inventive, very intelligent. John Heisman probably coached in the most famous game of all. He coached for Georgia Tech, which we know of now, and he coached against Cumberland. And the final score was 222-0. So upon getting out of the coaching world, so to speak, he was named the first president and what we would know as executive director of the Downtown Athletic Club in New York City. And in his later years, they decided to name an award after him to the top college player of all NCAA football. And so that's why in 1930 was the first recipient of the Heisman Trophy for that most outstanding player in all of college football. Most recently, John was memorialized at the barren land that I spoke of as his boyhood playground, with a stone monument with a bronze plaque on it that tells the story that I just conveyed to you. That monument was dedicated in 1984, which was the 125th anniversary of the discovery of oil. Fast forward 25 years, at the 150th anniversary of the discovery of oil in 2009, he was recognized by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission with a blue and gold plaque that many see along the highways. And that is actually placed at Carter Field, which is home of our current Titusville Rockets, which is the football team that plays in town.
Hello, my name is Caroline Ford. I'm doing my story on the transition of the town after SciTemp. In 1993, I came up to the city of Titusville as the city manager. I had been involved in city government on many occasions previously, and the town that I came from was out of the Mid-Mon Valley, and that town had a similar situation where the steel plant went out. The major industry in the steel was the steel plant. Major industry up here in Titusville at the time that I came up here was the steel plant. We had over 4,600 people working there. The steel plant was sold to Armco Steel Corporation in 1992, and we were looking at what we were going to do as far as our future, our economy, all the various components of the town, including the schools, the hospital, the banks, transportation. Everything was dependent upon that steel mill and what we were going to be doing. We formed a coalition of people. They included everybody from the school district to the city, to the chamber, to the redevelopment authority, to private business and industry, to the ministerium. All these people got together to talk about what the future of Titusville was going to hold and how each of us can make that future better. So we got together and we decided that we were going to try to retain the expertise that we had at the steel mill. Those people eventually developed private businesses and maintained those private businesses here in the town. That helped our economy. We were able to maintain the tax base so that the school district could maintain and grow and expand. All these places went forward in a positive fashion, working together. So what we did was the city worked with the redevelopment authority and purchased the property at SciTemp. We purchased it off of Armco for $1. We also purchased the property across the creek from SciTemp Steel Mill, which had been a recreation facility of sorts. We involved ourselves in the Keystone Opportunity Zone. We were one of the first in the state of Pennsylvania. We went down to Harrisburg and talked to the governor about making opportunities available for the city and for the rest of the state. This included infrastructure development, transportation, and business. We also went down to Harrisburg and we talked to them about a Key 93 project, which was a recreation project. Over at the 26 acres that we purchased, we had gotten off of SciTemp, off of Armco. That developed into a bike trail, multiple ball fields, soccer fields, football fields, BMX track. It was a $1.3 million project that we were able to match dollar for dollar against state monies from timbering that property. This was the volunteerism of this coalition and the people of Titusville that made this happen. Without the help of this coalition, without the volunteerism that we had amongst all these different groups, organizations, and so forth, they were the strength of Titusville, they were the future of Titusville, and they are what Titusville is today.
My name is Leah Carter, and I'm very happy to share information about the Titusville Open Air Market. The Titusville Open Air Market has been around for quite a long time in other forms. It was a farmer's market, and then over 10 years ago, the Titusville Renaissance, a volunteer group for downtown revitalization here in Titusville, took over the running of the market, and we wanted to grow it into more than just a produce market. And so we renamed it the Titusville Open Air Market, and we now hold the market in a public park, a little pocket park in the gateway of our downtown. And we brought in more than just the agricultural aspect of a market. We have a very strong agricultural presence in our area. We wanted to support that, but we also wanted to support our local artists and artisans. Homegrown and handmade is part of our logo, and so we bring in jewelers and hand-spun yarns and all kinds of artisan products along with our farmers market produce. We have a wide variety of vendors participating. This year we had 15 vendor members at our market, and they included, besides produce, we also included different kinds of meats, grass-fed beef, pork, ham, things like that. We also have products, baked good products and dried and fresh herbs, plants and flowers, jewelry makers, goat milk fudge, goat milk soap, hand-knitted products from alpaca and Angora farms that are nearby. We have a wide variety of artisan products to offer the public in addition to the fresh produce. To help make it a gathering spot for the community, which was part of our goal, we also like to feature different entities, a lot of our artists and artisans in the community. We have an evening market twice a month where we have local musicians that come in and play, and we also have an opportunity for local groups to fundraise for their missions. We have a church that sells refreshments for their mission team. Our VFW offers lunches, a lunch program, picnic in the park. We also have the Women of the Moose. A lot of our service clubs come and they sell products, and also organizations like Women's Services that want to share information and also fundraise for their mission. We also bring in different programs and feature different entities to try and bring in different foot traffic, people that maybe don't normally come to market, to make them aware of what's available there. Some of our programs are educational. We'll have how to raise, a gentleman came in and spoke about how to raise chickens. We also have the naturalist from Oil Creek State Park comes in and with different programs.
Hi, I'm Kathy Licht. I am the owner, with my husband Larry, of Warner's Bakery in Titusville. The bakery has been a bakery for a very long time. Before Warner's Bakery was there, it was Coburn's Bake Shop, and he was located in the building out front on Franklin Street. And it's a building that started out as a mercantile and then a liquor store in the 1890s, and then in the 20s and 30s and 40s, Mr. Coburn was in there. And Mr. Warner actually worked for Mr. Coburn. And then they were such friends, they closed the buildings in together. Mr. Warner bought the house out on Main Street, and it's one of the oldest houses in town from 1835. But they closed it in, it's a big L-shaped building, they closed it in and they shared the kitchen in the back. So they worked together, and Coburn's was out front on Franklin Street and Warner's was in the back on Main Street. But Mr. Warner, Mr. Coburn worked together for a long time, then Mr. Warner bought Coburn out. And then Mr. Warner was in there until about 1996. And then he turned the bakery over to his daughter. And she ran it with her husband for a while, and then they in turn sold it to some of their employees. In 2009, my husband and I purchased the bakery, the whole L-shaped building, the house where Mr. Warner lived, the old house from 1835, the old Coburn Bake Shop, everything was connected. So we purchased that out of bankruptcy in 2009. It took us 2 years to clean it just enough to open the bakery part. And we opened the house, we rented that out. I understand Mr. Warner lived in this house and people would come to his door all hours of the day to get donuts or bread. My husband and I didn't want to be that accessible. So we renovated the bakery, cleaned everything up, cleaned all the old equipment. We were so fortunate because all the original equipment was there. Some of the mixers are pre-World War II, and they're running now. We use those today. And all the old pans, the old seasoned pans that Mr. Warner used, they're all there. And I think that makes a difference when you're baking. All the original recipes either were found upstairs in Mr. Warner's desk drawer, handwritten, or many of them were found in the basement in old leather-bound books. So we were just very fortunate. It took us 2 years to renovate the place, and we opened it in 2011, Christmas time, 2011. My birthday's December 12th, and my husband told me, "Happy birthday, we bought you a bakery." The Eaton Park Connection's a beautiful story. Jim Broadhurst, who is currently the chairman of the board at Eaton Park, he was the CEO and now he's chairman of the board. He went to school across the street, right across the street from the bakery, not even across the street, it's right across our parking lot, is Main Street School. The parking lot goes right next to their playground, so we see the kids all the time. Well, Mr. Broadhurst went to school at Main Street School, and he used to come over and see Mr. Warner's all the time after school to get a smiley face cookie. Mr. Warner started the smiley face cookie years ago. So through the years, all the kids were coming for this smiley, and Mr. Broadhurst went to work for Eaton Park back like 1985, 86, and they were just opening their bakeries. So Mr. Broadhurst said, I know somebody who does these great cookies and all the kids love them, let me go talk to him. And Jim Broadhurst came to see Mr. Warner and asked, can we use your recipe at Eaton Park? And Mr. Warner was compensated by having some free employees in there. Eaton Park sent 4 employees over for several months, and Mr. Warner trained those employees, and he didn't have to worry about salaries or anything. But through the years, in 1987, and now Mr. Broadhurst still comes to the bakery. This is why I know the story in detail, because I heard it straight from him. In 1987, Eaton Park trademarked the cookie. They never intended it to be that way, but it was so popular, they trademarked it. So today, even today, Eaton Park does not allow other people to make the cookie. However, on their website, they still mention Warner's Bakery is where they originally got the recipe. And they know we're making the cookie. Mr. Broadhurst comes on a regular basis, buys some of ours, and we're using the original recipe. Eaton Park through the years has just changed it a little bit. They sell so many. I mean, it's wonderful, but it works well for both of us because he comes to see us. We enjoy Eaton Park, and it's just nice when people come in and say, oh, I heard this was the original, and it's like, yes, it is. And it's like Grandma's cookie. It's a nice, thick, soft cookie, and it's frosted the old-fashioned way where you take the spatula and go, frost my cookie, put my eyes on. And I have different people in the bakery doing that, so sometimes the faces look a little bit different. I think our bakery is very special because we try to keep the traditional quality that was in the bakeries back in the 50s. I grew up in Chicago, a lot of good bakeries in Chicago, and when I came here, very limited, and it was getting very commercial in the bakery industry. You get it at your grocery stores, or you get it in your big conglomerate stores. So I thought it would be so nice to have a real bakery where you got all that homemade, like Grandma baking. I tell people my refrigerator looks like Grandma's refrigerator, just larger quantities. We have real cream, real milk, real eggs. We use flour, we use sugar, we use brown sugar, we use molasses. There's no chemicals. There's nothing artificial. The only preservative I'd say we use is, in its seasoning, flavoring, is a little salt, a pinch of salt. So I think that's what's really important. And as a nurse, that's important to me, that the young crowd coming up now experience what that real baking is, not something out of a box.
I'm Missy Westcott, and I'm doing my story on Missy's Arcade Restaurant in Titusville. Missy's Arcade is a little diner in Titusville. It's like the hub of the community. We have home-cooked breakfast, lunch, and on Fridays our fish fry. Back in the 1800s, it started out as a tavern. In 1914, it became the Arcade Restaurant. And then in early 50s, I believe, Bill Horn took over the Arcade Restaurant. There was a lot of owners in between the two, but he had it for a little over 2 decades, which he was the longest owner. And that's where most of my stories from Titusville come, and I tried to stick with what he had created. In 2001, I took over the Arcade Restaurant, renamed it Missy's Arcade, and I did some renovations, from starting with the wallpaper to the Coca-Cola theme. Everything's done in 50s Coca-Cola style. Even my booth, which I redid this year, painted the diner pink. We're sticking to the home style cooking and just trying to keep it like a step back in time. I decided to purchase the restaurant because I've been a waitress for years. And actually the fellow that had it before me decided he wanted to get out, so I thought, well, let's just go for it. And it ended up, it's 15 years later, and we're still going for it, so. I get great support from the Titusville community. I feel that that's most of the people I do get. Just like the people that stay in the cabooses or go to ride the train. All those people send them my way too, so we all work together, try to get everybody.
Hi, I'm Keith Bromley, and I'm here today to talk about Hillhurst Bed and Breakfast, a place we consider to be a community place. The house was built in 1908, and we are the fourth family to own it. Naturally, a lot of oil money back in those days. It was finished in 08, and the first family, the Emerson family, had it from 1908 to 1938, at which time it was sold to the Chick family. The Chick family had it from 38 to 51. When they sold it in 51, it was deeded to the Presbyterian Home of Erie. Presbyterian Home uses a care facility in this city for 60 years plus. So we came along in 2008 and bought it and made a bed and breakfast out of it, and it's just been a fun deal ever since. The house is 8,300 square feet, so it's a rather large house. The basement encompasses what you see. It's a full basement. It was built, like I said, finished back in 1908. It's a sandstone foundation. It's in really good shape. The previous owners took very good care of it. It's got 13 bathrooms in it. I don't know what the total number of rooms are, but right now we're using it. We have 10 rooms for the bed and breakfast that we use on a regular basis. The house is cool. Like I said, it was built back in 1908. It was built in that time frame where oil was real big. It's a neat house. A lot of the houses that were built back in that time frame were devoid of a couple of things. Kitchens of any size and closets. This place kind of broke the rule on that. The family was wealthy, they had a lot of money, so it has great big closets, got a great big kitchen space. Neat house. It's a really neat house with a lot of flavor. The original owners of the house, it is said that she was from the South, in fact, the deep South. So if you look at the house, you'll find that it has a southern look to it. It's got the columns, the big columns out front. It's got faces to south. And she was from the deep South, Mississippi specifically. And if you were to go to Mississippi and find her childhood home, you'd find a house that looked much like this. And she had said that if she's going to move to the North Country, she wants to take her home with her. So one of the neat things we found out when we researched this house, we found out the original name of the house was Hillhurst. So back when it was initially built, it was called Hillhurst. We liked it. We liked the sound of it. Thought, boy, it sounds regal. Let's use this as a name for the bed and breakfast. So we did. You know what? Like I said, when we first started out, we started as a bed and breakfast. And a short time after we started, we got the idea to do some catering. So we started catering events. Since that day, we've done all kinds of things for the community. We've done community events. We've done baby showers, wedding showers, memorial services, nice weddings out on the lawn. It's just really been a neat place. Like I said, a community place that the community has wrapped their arms around and really used it, kind of validated the place.
My name is Diane Harrison, and I'm going to talk to you today about the Oil Creek and Titusville Railroad. The Oil Creek and Titusville Railroad, its first excursion took place in 1986, and in 1987, ridership rose from 3,000 to 38,000. By the 20th anniversary, ridership went up to 540,000, and then we just celebrated our 30th anniversary where it rose to over 750,000. The ride itself is a 3-hour round trip, and the vintage cars are named after special people from the oil region. For instance, car 59 was named after Colonel Edwin Drake, who of course discovered oil in 1859. The Oil Creek and Titusville Railroad has the only operating railway post office car in the United States. Passengers can mail postcards from there. If anyone's riding the train in December, they're more than welcome to bring their Christmas cards and have them mailed directly from the train and postmarked with the Oil Creek and Titusville Railroad stamp on it, which a lot of people like to do. It's a perfect souvenir. Passengers are also free to walk about the train and go to the gondola car, which is also the open car. And it's from there that they can actually stand out and watch the scenery from the train, and they can see sometimes an eagle flying up the creek, possibly bears, and take perfect pictures, right from the open car. We also have the Wabash Cannonball, which is our first class car. The first class car weighs 100 tons. It has a private vestibule from which people can stand and take pictures as the train travels down the rails. Because it's the southernmost car, other passengers that opt to walk through the train will not be walking through the first class car, so it's a more private car. The railroad offers special events throughout the year. We have our Bunny Run in conjunction with Easter. We also have our Santa Express in December, and the Santa Express is usually 2 different Saturdays. We also have murder mysteries for those who like the whodunit type of thing, and you never know who is part of the action, and they are so popular that many of those are offered throughout the year. One of the favorite events for me is the World War II event, and that is set up in the summer. It is an event that we try to pay tribute to all of our veterans, with our special focus being on our World War II veterans. In conjunction with that, the 99th Infantry Historical Society out of Erie will come down to the station. They will set up German and Allied encampments out behind the station. Anyone is welcome to come down and talk with the reenactors, walk through the stations. The only charge that weekend is basically to ride the train to see the actual battle. And what happens with that is the Germans are on board, and it starts out being a German train as it heads down through the valley, and there are Allied prisoners on board. And there are sometimes shooting that takes place down through the valley as the Allies travel along the route trying to take over the train. When you get to Wren Farm, a battle takes place, and of course the Allies win, and then it comes back up through the valley as an Allied train. What the events are for are to raise money so that we can continue to make improvements to our station. We can also then offer other special events. The railroad's set up so that it is an educational entity as well. There are many Titusville residents that remember the trains running through Titusville. One of those residents would be Mrs. Frazier. Mrs. Frazier, almost every time the train runs past her house, she's out on her porch just waving at the passengers. Now, when the train goes by, actually passengers have heard about Mrs. Frazier, or repeat passengers know she's going to be there, and they are so happy and look forward to waving back at her. So she's become an asset, definitely not just to the railroad, but to our town as well.
Hi, my name's Kevin Halsey, and I'm here to talk about 2 wonderful treasures that are found within the 7,000-acre Oil Creek State Park, which lies between Titusville and Oil City. The first gem is the Oil Creek Bike Trail, which is a 9.7-mile asphalt trail that follows along a historical railroad bed. Along the bike trail, you see all kinds of people. You see families, you see people out training, you see people just out for a leisure ride, and it is truly a beautiful ride as it parallels Oil Creek. The next gem I want to talk about is my favorite, and that is the Ray Gerard hiking trail. It is named after Ray Gerard, who was a Titusville resident that began blazing the trail in 1980 during his retirement. And Ray, along with his group, the Over the Hill Gang, maintained the trail. And Ray passed in 1997, but the Over the Hill Gang still works and maintains the trail and volunteers many, many hours. And they do a great job for the trail. The main trail is a 32-mile loop that basically runs along the ridge lines above Oil Creek, along the east and west side of the creek. And along the trail, you see all different kinds of sights, wildlife, waterfalls, scenic views of the valley below. There's a super old cemetery. It's a great trail in that you can go out for 2 or 3 days and hike 32-mile loop, but there are also 4 crossover trails, and those are great for maybe a quick 2-hour hike, or you could do maybe 2 loops, and you can have a variety. You could do a different loop each day if that works for you. There are 2 camping areas along the trail. Each have 6 shelters that can accommodate 3 to 4 people. There's also a tending area at each overnight area. There you can find restrooms, water, wood, so it's very convenient. Some parts of the trail are quite rugged, and other parts are fairly level where you can cruise. The trail served me very well in preparing for my Appalachian Trail through hike, which I completed last year, 2015. I've spent lots of time on the Ray Gerard Trail over the years, and it's always a different experience. Sometimes I run into different people and stop and chat. It's a very unique combination of natural beauty and historical significance, which is quite nice. Sometimes I go alone, sometimes I go with a friend or two, and I usually take my favorite hiking buddy, my little girl named Lily, and she always has a great time.
Hi, I'm Norm Pattison, Titusville, Pennsylvania, one of the co-founders of the Oil Creek 100, along with a fellow from Erie named Tom Jennings, who I have to credit with having been the one that really pushed it forward. The Oil Creek 100 is an ultramarathon trail race that we have distances of 100 miles and 50K. And the race is all run on trails down in the Oil Creek State Park that was founded as part of the original oil discovery, historical commemoration of the original oil discovery at Drake Well, which is on the northern edge of the Oil Creek State Park. And there's a trail that runs along both the east and the west side of Oil Creek that was put in a number of years ago by the Department of Environmental Resources. And Tom Jennings called me up one day. I had met him up in Erie, Pennsylvania at some Presque Isle races up there. And he asked me if I knew anything about the trail down in the Oil Creek State Park, because he was planning on running the Burning River 100 and had never trained for a trail marathon yet. And he wanted to check out the Oil Creek State Park. So he came down and I showed him where it was, and we took off. And while we were on our way, I said to him, "This is where we ought to have a race." And he said, "Do you think they'd let us?" And I said, "I don't know, I'll make a few phone calls." And they said down the Oil Creek State Park, that'd be perfectly fine, just let them know what we want to do. And Tom Jennings took over from there and has done one heck of a job of setting it up. The first race, we held it in 2009, and we just had the 8th annual. And it gets quite a reception to the point that we have to turn people away. There's not enough space in the middle school that we use for race headquarters to be able to support any more than what we let into the race. And it's become quite competitive trying to get in. We have participants that come from overseas and from all parts of the United States. People that run the race seem to like to try to come back for additional participation, mentioning the organization, the use of the middle school, which makes a wonderful race headquarters, the trail itself, the beauty of the Oil Creek State Park. That's quite a stretch of valley down through there for 16 miles. All forest on both sides of the Oil Creek, and it's a very nice trail that runs on both sides of Oil Creek. And there seems to be a liking for being able to come to small communities like this that are safe and easy to negotiate around in addition to real good lodging. One of the things that helps make the race possible, and I think probably contributes to the success of it, in fact it does contribute to the success of it, is that we have a tremendous number, about 100 volunteers every year that help to organize and put the race on. We've gotten a lot of comments from people about how congenial and cooperative and friendly the people in the community are, and how supportive they are in helping to keep the race organized and keep them safe and comfortable.
Hi, I'm Bill Logan. I'm a retired art teacher here in Titusville. I spent 35 years mostly in the elementary, but in the year 2003 I started working at the high school, one period a week with the high school seniors, as just a chance to add a little embellishment to their career and to see what I could do with them. I had a project that actually failed. It was made out of styrofoam, and I was going to have Henri Matisse type figures out in the courtyard that the kids would be able to cut out quickly, paint, and suspend out there. Unfortunately, the courtyard has incredibly strong winds, and my little styrofoam projects immediately started breaking. One of the projects that made it through was a man that was going to be climbing. Instead, my collaborator and friend Uriah Sampson, who was actually the Art 4 instructor, took this one piece that didn't make it out in the courtyard and suspended it on the ceiling in the art room. And throughout the course of the year, he moved it. And it dawned on me, what a great idea. I was to work with the high school seniors the next year, and I thought, how about if we collaborate together and make ceiling tiles that the kids could carve into, paint, and they could easily be dropped into all the ceiling tiles throughout the school. There was a change in the scheduling, and I couldn't work with the Art 4 students, so Uriah took the project on, and he found that the kids didn't want to just stay on a shallow plane, meaning carving just a little bit. When you think of a coin, that's bas relief. Instead, the kids wanted to sculpt outward, and so they did. They started building onto the styrofoam and expanding out and down, and sometimes up and in. And so with that, we've now created, over the course of the time, over 30 ceiling tiles. We have about 15 in the school now. And they are from, once again, as simple as my original idea to very fantastic creations that hang from the ceiling, almost all completely made of styrofoam, though other sculpting materials are used, such as Paris craft. That is a cloth that is embedded with plaster of Paris. It's painted with acrylic paint, and they last 4 years. Some of our ceiling tiles have been up for over 10 years. So the original idea was to have just a shallow carving that would be in sight if you happen to look up at it, and instead the children are sculpting and bringing wonderful, fantastic ideas down from the ceiling and sometimes back in. One of the very first ones was a man's leg up inside a broken tile, and it looked like someone had gotten caught in an air duct. Along with that, we have human forms with hands that are reaching out. We've got sometimes one single item. There is a huge 4-foot human eye with eyelashes that is sculpted that can pass underneath. And I love that when one of the teachers walking underneath it said, "That thing creeps me out." We have 2 white-tailed deer involved in the rut, and their antlers are clashed together as they extend down from the ceiling. We have Starry Night, one of my own personal favorite pieces by Vincent van Gogh, which is done about 4 inches deep, and the huge tree in the foreground is sculpted out, as well as the moon and some of the stars. When we first started this project, the very first ceiling tiles that were put in place, it was fun to watch the students look in awe at their fellows' work and pass underneath with their heads twisting upward and getting a different view as they walk on down the hall. And that's an enjoyment that I no longer get to see as a retired teacher, but I know it happens because on special events like summer theater, when I'm there and I watch grandparents taking their grandchildren down the hall, and the little children get to look up in wonderment at all the wonderful things that are coming down. We also have Santa Claus breaking through in the ceiling in one panel and his bag of toys breaking through in another panel. In the cafeteria, we have a wonderful rendition of the Mad Hatter from the latest Alice in Wonderland cartoon, and it's done just about life size. So, much like people who take the Statue of Liberty as an everyday occurrence that live in New York City, the people of Titusville have grown quite used to and accustomed to the ceiling tile. But it's fun for me as a retired art teacher when I'm there for special events to watch people take notice of the wonderful art that exists only here in Titusville.
My name is Ashley Eichhorn-Thompson, and I'm here to tell you about Titusville Council on the Arts. Titusville Council on the Arts has been in existence for over 30 years. It was first started by Ed Meyer, who was a very respected and admired man of the community. He was a recreational director at the time. So he begun the organization over 30 years ago, and we're still here today. One thing that's great about Titusville Council on the Arts and its programming is that it's very diverse. We celebrate all aspects about the arts: music, visual arts, theater. So our programming includes concerts in the park every year in the summer. We do concerts outside in Shidi Park for the community. We do youth theater for students 8 to 15. Every year we do a musical production. We have an art exhibit, a fine art exhibit and chalk walk that we do during Oil Fest every year. And then we also have a folk festival that we do during the summer as well. Another event that we do is the Pittsburgh Symphony Brass and a Charlie Brown Christmas every year. It takes place at the University of Pittsburgh, Titusville, in Henney Auditorium. And the Pittsburgh Symphony Brass has been coming for over 10 years, I believe. And then 3 years ago, we added a Charlie Brown Christmas with the high school drama students. And it's just like the Charlie Brown Christmas that you see on TV, with the same music and even hand motions down as well, and the kids just have a really good time doing it. And by combining the two, we feel like more people get to see the brass, and then they also get to see our youth perform as well. So it's a nice combination. Titusville Council on the Arts would not be able to do what it does without our board of directors. It's an extremely hands-on board of directors. They are at every event helping us. And then we also have wonderful volunteers who help out at our events too. Again, especially with some events like Hoda Fest, which is our folk festival, it's a whole weekend. It is Friday all day through Sunday, and even a lot of preparation before. And I can't tell you how many endless hours not only our board but our volunteers put in, and so we really appreciate that. We have incredible support from businesses within the community and organizations. We have sponsors I would say from the majority of businesses, everyone's incredibly generous, whether they sponsor a specific event or whether they just donate annually, but we're really lucky to have their support. And again, our programming is made affordable by their sponsorship and their support, so we're very grateful for that. One of the most important things about Titusville Council on the Arts to me is the opportunity it provides our youth here to experience the arts. Growing up, I was very much involved in the arts, and my husband was as well here in Titusville. And it's very important for confidence and self-esteem skills. And so one of our programs, Youth Theater, that I mentioned that is ages 8 through 15, the past 2 summers we've had over 70 students participate. So to me that really shows a need and a want for programs like that and for our youth to be involved in theater. And we do have some students that go through youth theater onto college and major in the arts. And then we have a lot of students who don't, but they still gain a lot of confidence throughout the summer. You literally see them grow throughout the summer. So that's one of the most important things to me.
Hello, I'm Joe Carter from Titusville, and I'm here to talk to you about the Take Pride in Titusville Committee. Take Pride in Titusville Committee started in 1998 as a project of Rotary to try and get it out in the public, doing public things and exposing ourselves a little bit more about what we are and what we do. As we did that, it was decided to try and see if we can join with a couple other groups, Lions and Kiwanis to be particular, and see if we could learn a little bit more about what each other does and see if there were projects that we could accomplish together that we can't on our own. And since then, we have had many other groups and organizations join us, the VFW, Hospital Auxiliary, Renaissance, the Chamber, on and on. We have over 22 organizations working on and off on different projects in the community now. The committee is actually made up of whoever in town would like to volunteer to be on the committee. We have no officers, so everybody's on the same playing field, which makes it a lot easier. We are a committee of the chamber now for logistical reasons, but otherwise we do everything on our own. We do downtown cleanups in the parks in the spring. We do them before Oil Festival. We volunteer for Oil Festival, doing logistics, lining up the parade, helping out downtown and all the other projects during that big celebration. We used to do Earth Day Festival at Burgess Park in the spring. We're working on other projects like a community event sign that we'd like to put up in town and sponsor. And all of this is volunteer time, and all of this is volunteer donations. Not a penny of taxpayer dollars goes into any of the projects we do. Our biggest project is Holiday at Burgess, which is a drive-through Christmas display that we started 14 years ago in Burgess Park in Titusville near the Recreation Center. And it's a small park, but it's a big drive-through, and we have added to the display over the years. It's large wire-frame light displays, all different sizes and styles. We bought some originally, and now we custom make our own. We also do all the downtown Christmas lights along the street, and we do Christmas lights in Shidi Park downtown. The gazebo is done by the Lions Club in Shidi Park, but we do all the other displays in town. And we put up the wiring, we maintain the lights, we store the lights, we put them up, we take them down, and again, not a taxpayer dollar goes into any of it. For the Holiday at Burgess project alone, there's over 200 people that work on it every year, and it's a year-round working on lights. We're actually starting to set them up tomorrow, and it takes us a month for some of us to wire them and check the bulbs and everything after we get the large displays up. But there are over 200 people that work on that project alone. And part of the fun thing, I think, of the Take Pride in Titusville Committee is you're getting people that are working together that never would in any other community. And they do it in Titusville, and they do it in a grand way. Well, our goal again was to see if we could get these people working together on projects that never would have happened before. There are tens of thousands of light bulbs and and things that need to be done to these things year-round, and having all these different people and personalities and ages and everything involved in it, from little kids to senior citizens, is just a lot of fun. But the main goal is to promote the beauty of Titusville and the spirit of Titusville. And how better to do that than during the holiday season, when you have volunteers from town with their own time and their own money that are putting on a display that people come from all over the surrounding area now to see. And the drive-through is free. Normally they'll give a donation if they'd like, but the drive-through is free. You can come through as many times as you want. And just to see that smile on that adult or kid's face when they come through and say, "Merry Christmas, thank you for standing out in the cold and being here tonight," just makes it all worthwhile. But it shows the spirit of Titusville, and I think it's a really neat thing to display.
Hi, I'm Emily Altamar, and I'll be talking about Titusville Oil Festival. Titusville Oil Festival has been a tradition for about 30 years in the community. The most notable one's probably Oil 150, which happened in 2009, celebrating the 150th anniversary of oil. But we've been increasing the festival in the last few years and doing more to make it bigger and better every year. The festival is always the second Saturday of August and the Friday before, so in just 36 hours we cram in a lot of activities for the whole family. There's a wine walk that the Chamber of Commerce holds on the Friday night, while the food vendors and craft vendors are open downtown. There's concerts, live music in the street, activities for kids, things for them to ride and do and bounce on and climb on. There's also then Saturday morning the parade, which is kind of a highlight for a lot of people, and that starts at 11 o'clock in the morning and takes about an hour and runs the whole length of Main Street. So there's always people setting out their lawn chairs towards like the end of that week, getting ready for saving their spot for the Oil Festival parade. There's also a antique car show that takes place downtown, so a lot of people enjoy coming for that. And then the Blue Canoe Brewery does a beer festival on Saturday afternoon, which is another big draw for a lot of people. And then everything wraps up with a pre-fireworks tailgate party with a band down at Carter Field, which is the high school football field. And we have fireworks by Gibson Fireworks every Saturday night to close the festival. The majority of the events are free for everyone to come, so you can just walk downtown with your family, free music, and check out all the sights and sounds. And a lot of the other things are pretty low cost, like $1 for the kids to participate in the activities all day long. So that's really nice that it's economical and good for whole groups and big families to come and take part. Every town has some kind of celebration, and this is Titusville's, but it's a quintessential small town festival, and it brings people together. It's a nice opportunity for the people who live here to get together and celebrate and have pride in the community and have fun together, but it's also a nice opportunity to bring friends and family from out of town and kind of introduce them to Titusville and the history, oil heritage, and to all have a good time together.
Hi, I'm Haley Henke. Today I'd like to talk to you about Fidelia Hall. So around the 1860s, a group of German people here in Titusville wanted to create a congregation where they could worship here in Titusville, but in their own German language. So they got together and the congregation grew, and around the 1870s, they had enough people that they decided to build their own church. So they started building what came to be St. Paul's United Church of Christ. So the St. Paul's Church was finally built in 1873 and continued to be entirely in the German language until about 1923, when they started having English and German services. One of the neat things about the St. Paul's Church was the history of the bell. The bell was given as a gift from the Emperor of Germany, Emperor Wilhelm. He sent over a cannon that had been captured from the French in the Franco-Prussian War, and it was brought here and then forged into the bell that still can ring in St. Paul's Church, now Fidelia Hall. At one point in time, there became a big crack in the bell, and so the community came together and collected silver dollars to repair the bell, and ended up collecting 99 silver dollars, which were melted down to fill in the crack. Well, we were looking in the area for a house to buy, and we were online looking at all the realtor websites, and there was houses, beautiful houses. This town has a ton of available space, but then we saw this giant church that was just waiting for us, and then we were like, oh my gosh, this church comes with a house. And so we kept looking, and we kept trying to be reasonable. We kept being like, this is a terrible idea. Like, this is too much, it's too big, but it just kept like wearing at us, and we had to have it. So we knew that if we bought this and we could bring life back into it and, do something great for the community. When you walk into it, there's a feeling of magic and a feeling of history. The stained glass just shines in, and in the evening especially, there's little prisms in the stained glass that put rainbows all over the wall at around dinner time. So I like to sneak out there sometimes and just feel the glow, and just the, so many happy moments have happened in that space over time, and it's just, you can feel it. One of the other pieces that's really magical in the space is the organ. It fills the whole front wall of the church. It was put in 1895, and behind it they had to build on an addition into the church just to house all of the pipes that are in the background that you don't even know they're there, but when you hear it, then you know. And it was put in by the Salem Organ Company in Ohio, which went on to become the company that built the organ for the World's Fair. So when we got to know the Titusville community, we noticed that there was a lot of talent and a lot of art and a lot of passion here in Titusville, but there wasn't a space for people to express it and share it. So we wanted to make Fidelia Hall be a space for the community where we could bring people together and have a space for people to create art and to enjoy art, and so we've decided to make it into a community art space. When we were researching the old St. Paul's Church, we came across the original deed for the church, and it was signed by William and Fidelia Barnsdale. And we had never came across a name so beautiful as Fidelia, and felt that it needed to be brought to light. The fact that a woman's name was on the deed at that time felt really special to us, and we felt like it was important to give her the spotlight in our new history for the space.
Hi, I'm Ed Wheeling. My story is about my wife that I've been with 64 years now. Well, I grew up really in Chapmanville. I went to school in Diamond, Chapmanville, and Sunville, and then I came to Titusville for my 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. And I wrestled 4 years for Titusville. And I think it's a great little town. I've been an Elk member for a lot of years. I was a trustee for almost 18 years down there. So I got to know a lot of people in Titusville. And also, I've been a Shriner for 50 years too, and a Mason for 50 years. So I guess that pretty much rounds it up. I've been busy. Doris, my wife, she grew up in this little farm, and I met her at a basketball hall. She was playing basketball. Well, I really didn't know her. But the way I always said was she had the nicest legs of any girl on the basketball team, so I thought I'd better talk to her. But when I seen her, I kind of thought right then she might be the one I really want. So I had a friend of mine, I was only 15 at the time, almost 16, but I had a friend of mine take us home. And we were together ever since that. I was only 15 when I met her, but I turned 16 just a week or so after that, and I got my driver's license. So she said, you have to come over and meet my dad and my mom. I said, well, sure, I will. So I went in. He's a real big fella, real harsh voice. He said, "What's your name?" I said, "Ed Wheeling." And from then on, we got along great. I mean, they was almost like a second dad and mom to me after I started going over there. Well, we planned our wedding probably a month in advance. And a week before our wedding, I got a notice to be inducted in the Army. We were married February the 7th, 1953. And I left the Army March the 15th. And I had to wait till I got through basic training, then she came down and met me down there, and then we lived together down there in Augusta, Georgia. More or less, the state was in a service for 3.5 years. She stayed with me. And when I got out of the service, I just started working. We danced most of the time, went to dances. We danced 2 or 3 times a week. And we was always on the road doing something, dancing or going someplace together, always together. Well, we had 3 girls and a boy. And I was close to all of them. I taught them all how to dance. And we just got along great. And I look forward to see me come home when I come home at night from work. What I love about Doris is everything. I can't say anything wrong with her. I still remember what she was like when we got married. She had real black hair, beautiful, and I knew she was mine. My saying's always been, I take my wife Doris every place I go because I hate to kiss her goodbye. So I take her with me.
Titusville, I came as someone who had come from the suburbs of New York City, specifically Oyster Bay, the town of Oyster Bay out on Long Island. And Titusville, at the time that I came here in 1969, was a little village very much like Oyster Bay then was. Lovely Victorian homes, people interested in culture. Of course, we have our extension of the University of Pittsburgh, Titusville, here in town. And Titusville is full of very friendly, lovely, exciting, energized people who are strongly committed to the community and to its well-being.
Well, when we were looking for places, like as I said, in New York in '03, we wanted a small town, is basically what we wanted. And I was born and raised in Oil City in Seneca, which is not far from here. So we found this farm. It's really off the beaten path. It's Forest Glen Alpacas is definitely in the forest. But it was a God thing. We found this place. We were able to purchase it, and our children were able to grow up in a smaller school district, very Christian community. We've belonged to churches. The kids have grew up in youth group, and they are now both in college at Grove City College, which is a Christian private school. So it's really been a way of life for us.
One of my favorite things to do in this valley to this day is to spend time in Oil Creek. I do it with a fly rod. I fish for trout that we've got, and when I was a young man, fishing season meant fish only in the springtime, give it up for the rest of the year. But today, to the advent of good fishing methods, if the stream is open, trout can be caught. And I've spent some days on the very first day of Christmas Eve standing down in the creek fishing for trout.
My favorite thing about Titusville is a memory I have of coming to Titusville with my dad, who was a barber in Titusville for many years, Rex Halsey. And I can remember walking around town and the stores with my dad, and it seemed like everyone said, "Hi, how you doing, Rex?" And I thought that was really cool that everybody in town knew my dad.
Yeah, the thing I like about Titusville is that that is really the setting. You know, I come to work here every day, and you know, it's the most beautiful place to work. And you know, the museum is set in the valley just along Oil Creek, and you know, we're just outside of town. but we're close. And so you've got all of the amenities of town, but you're also in this beautiful natural setting. There's so many recreational and cultural opportunities here, and so it's something that, you know, we have things in this small town. You know, I'm from a small town in Ohio, and you know, the things that we have here are so special, and you know, especially, you know, world-class museum, and not every small town has one of those, and so it's really a special place.
As I said earlier, I grew up in Chicago. I love Titusville. When my husband and I came here to live, after being in the military and all over, we were looking around and we wanted to come home to his parents because he's an only child and they were in Tynesta. But that was a little too small for us. So then we were looking, Titusville, Oil City, Franklin, and Titusville had a wonderful layout. It had the hospital, and being a nurse, that appealed to me. It had the hospital, it had great schools. It was just the whole package. The people, small community, know your neighbors, walk up and down the street, you know everybody. Somebody's sick, you're gonna take them a bowl of soup. If you're making dinner and you know somebody's under the weather, they'll bring something to you or you're bringing it to them. So that small town atmosphere, healthy, friendly, wholesome. That's why we like Titusville.
Titusville, to me, is a very special place. It is, we have an abundance of interesting people who have lived here and contributed in one way or another to our American history, and it is a wonderful place to live. We have beautiful tree-lined streets, and one of the things I love most is the efficiency with which you can do things in Titusville. You can be working on a project and somebody will drive by and say, remember we have a meeting at 3 o'clock, or did you see something new that's been constructed or whatever. There is such a sense of community here, and because we don't have to drive far, we're so close, you are in constant contact with the people, and that is one of the things that I love about our community.
My favorite thing about the town is the community, the feeling of community that we have here.
I just love the people of Titusville. I love the families that have remained here, knowing the importance of our town. It's a very secure and safe town. We can walk up and down the streets and have no fear. And children, it's the best place for children to grow up. We have beautiful parks and recreation facilities, and I'm very, very proud of our town.
My favorite thing about Titusville is the people. Everybody's always ready to lend a helping hand. It's like everybody's a big family, so the community's really supportive and great.
And the people are friendly in here. And I have a lot of friends in Titusville, I know that. And it's just really a nice little town.
Our people are genuine, they're very resourceful. If you need something done or you're in a bind and you need something, it's pretty quick that you can make a couple phone calls and it could happen.
They understand the importance of the community and giving back. There's a lot of history here. Whenever we're planning events, it doesn't matter if it's an individual, if it's a service organization, if it's a business. If a community project is going on and we need help, they're right there to do whatever they can to promote the town.
Growing up in a rural area, coming to a small town you wouldn't think would be different, but it's different from how I grew up, but it's really nice. It's interesting, like the sense of community and knowing people, and you know where everybody lives and works, and when you see them, you run into them at the grocery store or church or just walking through the park or something. And that's really nice to have that sense of community here.
There's something very special and close-knit about this community. If you have an issue, if you have a problem, if you have a situation, there's always somebody that you can call on in town. And either that person's gonna help you with it, or that person is gonna know somebody who might be their neighbor, their cousin, and they're gonna be there. Just like something at the library, you know, we're in constant need for help repairing our building, help with programs, and people are just a phone call, or if they come through the library, just a stop away, and they're like, yeah, I know a person who can, perfect for that job. And that's what's best about this town.
That people know each other, it's safe. That's a big item, that it's safe and easy to get around in. That's the nice thing about small communities. They're easy to get around in. And there's a good economic vitality.
My favorite thing about Titusville is definitely the community. I think you'll hear that from a lot of people when they're asked the same question. It's just a wonderful sense of community. The people here are very supportive to each other. Like I mentioned before, the businesses, organizations, you definitely feel a great sense of support and a great sense of pride in the community and a willingness to keep that going.
I like the small community. My daughter lives out near Dallas, and we were just out there, and I said, we went out for breakfast, which is, the thing to do, and I thought, man, she could spend her whole life here and never see anybody she knows. I go out for breakfast in town, and I know most everybody in the restaurant, So it's kind of a tight-knit, small community that everybody knows everybody.
I think my favorite thing about Titusville is the talent we have, and I enjoy showcasing that. We have talented artisans and musicians and so many creative people, and I really enjoy helping them be recognized and share their talents with the community. And so I think that's probably my favorite part.
I'll tell you what, I love Titusville, and I will tell you this, not to offend anybody, but most of the people I think that live in Titusville don't realize what they have here. I grew up in Titusville. I left in high school, after high school, joined the Air Force, went off for 20 years. I traveled around the world. I was in the aviation business, and I've seen a lot of country. And I tell you what, I came back after I retired. I came back to my roots because of what's available in Titusville, that sense of community. We're rich in history. It's just a neat place to live, and I haven't found too many places like it in all my travels.
The second we moved to Titusville, we knew that we'd made the right decision. There's such a strong sense of community, and everyone knows each other, but it's not in a terrible kind of way. Everyone's looking out for each other, and one of the really special things, I think, especially as someone who has kids, is how safe of a community it is. You don't see these days a town where the kids just run in packs to the playground themselves or are riding bikes through the streets. Everyone knows that they're safe here and knows that people are watching out for each other.
I've lived all over the world when I was younger, and I came here to settle and raise my wife and family. And I've never met a more interactive, volunteering, positive, spirited community in my life anywhere I live. The surrounding, the community, the countryside is beautiful, the seasons are great, you can get wherever you need to from here very quickly. But it's the people, it's the spirit of the people that drilled the oil wells, that used to cut down the timber, it's all still here.
Our Town Stories from Titusville is brought to you in part by Bromley's Hillhurst Bed and Breakfast. Situated on the wooded hillside on North Perry Street in Titusville, each suite features a private bath, sitting area, television, and wireless access. Amenities also include a hot breakfast served in the Victorian dining room. Hillhurst Bed and Breakfast, a proud sponsor of Our Town Titusville. Our Town Stories from Titusville is also brought to you in part by Blue Canoe Brewery, BSI Services, Crawford County Historical Society, Friends of Drake Well, Missy's Arcade Restaurant, Take Pride in Titusville, University of Pittsburgh at Titusville, Visit Crawford County Convention and Bureau, and viewers like you. Thank you.